This is, in many ways, a series of kids against guys who've been there before. How do you look at?
I'm still a kid at heart, Monty.
Oh, you'll always be that,
Dang,
though.
man.
You'll always
when
be
we
that.
come and sit down, you got to flatter us first and then go into the hard-hitting questions. That is not a great way to start
You guys are
this press
experienced, though, man. You guys, wisdom.
Yeah.
You guys have wisdom and knowledge, and all of that stuff.
And youthful spirits.
Yeah, besides, just yesterday, one of your teammates said you had old man strength. So,
Who said that?
I'm not gonna throw him under the bus.
Had to be Loon.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you look at the roster differences and just the way the rosters are composed, what are you seeing?
Yeah, we've been around the block and we're trying to get back to the mountaintop and understand the opportunity in front of us. They're just, hitting their stride in terms of their identity as a team, individual guys who have made some amazing strides, in their early careers. Obviously with Ja, Desmond, Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks, they got a good core, and have had an amazing, 2.5, 3 year run where making their presence felt. But it's playoffs. It brings the opportunity where just who's going to be the better team in this particular series, and we're excited about the opportunity. Obviously, start on the road. Going into a hostile environment, one that we know from years past, and hopefully get off to a good start.
And there was one of your previous series against Memphis 6-7 years ago. That was a turning point, that began, if I recall, at a restaurant.
Question 2, Raymond. That was the over-under on the.
What are your memories of that and how important that was to you guys kind of coming together?
It was huge. We were, it's our third straight playoff run. We were number 1 seed that year. I got my first MVP, and everything's kind of blossomed at the right time. Then we got smacked in the mouth. We had to figure out how to respond, and obviously that story's was a great one coming out of the end of Game 3 and figuring out how do we turn the series around, and you definitely have fond memories of that, and that was a springboard to a lot of amazing runs. So hopefully brings back some good juice when we get back to Memphis.
Might you go back?
Say what?
Might you go back to that same?
I eat way healthier now, so I don't know if they got a good salad menu or some gluten-free stuff. Maybe.
When you guys were at the same nexus that this Grizzlies team is, when you were kind of the young, up-and-coming team and just figuring it out, but you could see the potential. Can you look back and kind of measure what you see in them now versus what you guys were at a certain point?
I mean, it's around that same time. I don't know how it's interesting. Everybody has their own journey, so comparisons get kind of difficult. But in terms of a young core trying to make that next step in terms of winning a playoff series, understanding the difference between regular season and the playoffs, just the intensity, the level of execution, focus it takes, how different every game is, let alone every series. There's so many things you learn, but we're right in that window where we were playing, San Antonio in the second round, getting challenged and having some success, but obviously not getting the job done, coming back and playing against a good Clippers team the next year, losing in 7, and then the first championship run. So all throughout those 3 years, we learned a lot about ourselves.
Sure.
And I'm sure they're going through that now. We don't want them to learn too much, though.
Not to hammer on the old man strength aspect, but now being, 4 or 5 years, or 3-4 years since your last championship run or run to the finals. What have you learned about being efficient with yourself physically that allows you to continue to play now versus maybe when you were there pre a couple injuries, pre third, all of that? Like, have you figured out how to get more out of your body, even if you're not physically exactly the same as you were 4 or 5 years ago?
I mean, it's that tagline: you work, smarter, not harder, and how you deal with the emotions of a long 82-game season. Each individual series and just the physical and mental toll it takes on you, how you spend your off days in between, practice sessions. All those things you get more refined in terms of mastering the ebbs and flows of, this time of year. There's a balance of like staying so locked in mentally on every detail of the game plan, every detail of your own performance, watching, the rest of the series going on around the league, with also getting away from it a little bit and keeping life as normal as possible, because it is such a high intensity, high stress environment, and you want it so bad. It's a tendency sometimes to go too hard, if there's a such thing. So just kind of mastering that, what that means for you, and for every player it's different, for every team it's different. But there's a comfortability of having gone through these reps, at this stage where it's all about how can you be as fresh as possible mentally and physically for every single game, and control what you can control in that standpoint.
Steph, Memphis is either 1 or 2 in the league in creating turnovers, and so how do you strike the balance between, you guys play fast and you play creative, and that's going to turnovers are part of the deal, but you don't want to get too crazy. So how do you're walking into a kind of a turnover trap. So how do you deal with that?
I think it's just you understand what the tendencies are, how they defend, how they use their length, their athleticism to create chaos out on the floor. Seeing those pictures when you're watching film, going back to when we played them, watching every game of their Minnesota series, and just try to be as thoughtful about how we're trying to create offense and create good shots on every possession. You go in with a certain mindset and approach to that, then you have to execute it. And like you said, we do play a certain style. There are going to be some turnovers. We're not going to play perfect games. And one, you got to control the type of turnovers you have. You cannot have the ones where they're unforced, where you're just giving them points in transition. And then the big momentum swings that are going to happen in a series like this with two high-octane offenses, like if you have, especially on the road, if you have a chance to kind of take a strong hold on a game, like turnovers can be a huge killer in terms of giving them momentum right back and giving them life. So timing and the type of turnovers that we have, knowing we're going to have some, like I don't want anybody playing tight, back to the basics type of basketball where you're not being yourself, but you have to be mindful of the type of plays you're trying to make and what can fuel a defense like that.
One more, and I'll put a positive spin on this. What have you done recently to assure that you'll be back in the groove free throw-wise?
Absolutely nothing. Same routine as I've been doing. Just got to stay locked in up here. That trick yourself in, the reps and expectation of what I could do at the line, and it's all going to work itself out.
Steph, obviously you guys rather start at home, but to start on the road and then potentially get 1 or 2, how does that kind of shift the series to maybe steal one in Memphis and then come back home when you do next week?
It's all about game 1, just coming out with a good effort. You want to win that game, and like you said, steal home court advantage right away and change the tone of the series from the start. Can't get too ahead of yourself, though. The challenge is how quickly can each team move on from the game plan of the last series. That's always an interesting kind of feel-out game. The first game in general, but usually the first half where you're you're so used to the tendencies that you have a team you just played, and Denver and Memphis are two totally different teams, so we have to be able to figure that out, and we're totally different than Minnesota. So which team can figure that out the fastest, get off to a good start.
I asked Clay this last week before you left for Denver, but the difference between making a shot in a big play at a home game crowd versus silencing a crowd on the road, can you describe the difference in those?
They're both amazing. They're different emotions, but they're both amazing. Like, it's because you understand how hard it is to win on the road, and when you have a big moment like that, there's no better feeling. At home, it's just because it's such a adrenaline rush when you have 19,000 fans going nuts and everybody's feeling it. You tend to have those a little bit more than the road ones, so you might value the road ones a little bit better.
Steph, it appeared in the last couple of games, Denver actually game planned for Jordan, like did some things to try to minimize his impact. I wonder what that's like for you. I can't imagine that's happened too many times. I mean, obviously with Clay, but where at least some of the focus comes off of you in terms of what they're trying to do defensively. What was that like, and what does that say to you about where you guys are?
Well, one, it says the word is out on how he can impact the game, and certain lineups that we have out there and the minutes that he plays and what he can do, you have to game plan for it or else he'll torch you. It's interesting because, I guess to your point, last 7-8 years of being on at this level at the stage, like you're always the one that from game to game there's questions of what are the adjustments, who's going to matchups, blitzes, traps, play physical, all the things that you can do. I've been through that for years and have had all the learning lessons and experiences of going through that. He asked some amazing questions going from game 3 to game 4 and 4 to 5 around what that was like, because there are plenty of series, Memphis being one of them back in 2015, where it was like that for 2 games, and we had to figure it out. So for him, it's a great experience knowing that, one, he has the talent, he has the ability, and we're asking him to do things that he's capable of and that help us win. The other team knows that. They're going to continue to game plan for it. But I like his chances to figure it out.
What's that like for you? Just to kind of, and did you sense that as the series evolved?
Yeah, that's part of just basketball. Is what you expect, especially the way he came out game 1 and game 2, and it's a natural progress. Like no players ever had just a smooth ride and arrival to the playoffs where every game you're just balling out of control like that. So you knew it was coming eventually, but like I said, I'm betting on him to be able to figure it out. And obviously this series you get to start from scratch and start brand new. And for me and other guys who've been around to watch it, like it's kind of dope just knowing we're still at this level trying to do it, and there's another guy who's seeing it from a totally different lens. Keeps us fresh.
All right, let's do a couple on Zoom real quick. Anthony Slater.
Yeah, Steph, how small do you anticipate this series going, and how quickly?
I have no idea. I mean, I watched their series. If I'm not mistaken, they played a lineup that I don't think they've played at all throughout the regular season with Ja, Tyus, Brooks, Bain, and Clark. And it's kind of one of those, they have a lot of options they can throw out there. So I know that they probably feel like their advantage is, trying to be physical, offensive rebounding, and using the athleticism and their size. Obviously, we try to negate that with our speed and spacing and whatnot, but try not to make too many predictions going in because you're just worried about what is our game plan going into game 1 and try to execute it.
Right, Jared Greenberg. Oh, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to go quick. Just how do you anticipate Kuminga can potentially help in this kind of series?
think the same thing you kind of saw in Game 4 in Denver, where if it goes, to a more up-tempo style, if it goes, more small ball, if you will, he can play, alongside Draymond, the 4 or 5 kind of combination, and give us a good boost of energy, good boost of athleticism, rim presence, speed in transition, and then obviously he can switch on a lot of different matchups if we need it. So he's got to be ready to make his presence felt if he's asked to.
Right, Jared, go ahead.
Thanks, Ray. Steph, I'm guessing this is probably not that big of a deal for you, but with so many guys that you're asking to play important minutes who have never been through this before, the fact that you're getting in late tonight, a 2:30 local time start tomorrow, is there anything you can tell the younger guys to be ready for in an awkward start time with, basically only a few hours off the plane?
No, we've had situations off the top of my head, I think like 2 or 3 throughout the regular season where you get the reps of what is your routine on a schedule like this. So practice, fly in, everybody's got to make sure they're getting the rest and doing what they need to do to keep their body fresh. And then in the morning, whatever your routine is, to get your mind, your body going as soon as possible to get ready for the game. We obviously just played an afternoon game in the last series last Sunday, so it helps to have experience knowing what you respond to better than or what you respond to the best in terms of what your routine is. So for us, rely on those reps and rely on all the different input we have from our coaches, performance staff, and everybody to get us ready. And then it's up to the players to figure that out.
All right, great. 2 more real quick. Baxter, go ahead.
Steph, some of your teammates talked about your strength and kind of prowess in the weight room. I was wondering if you could talk about your approach and diligence in the weight room, especially from the pandemic on.
Just consistency, like without putting up a PowerPoint of my all the sets and lifts and exercises you do. It's more just the consistency of understanding how I can be as effective and physical as possible with the frame that I have, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. There's just a constant attention to the details of what gains I get from the strength and conditioning program, and making sure I can stay at this level for as long as I can. I guess taking advantage of just being a little late bloomer in that respect.
All right, great. Last one. Mark, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Steph? When you look at, Memphis, it's a lot of young guys, players that you haven't, played in a series against. You look at throughout the rest of the playoffs, there's no LeBron, KDs, Kyries, the guys you're used to seeing around. Is it weird that, those big names that you're used to seeing are missing, or is that just a tribute to how the NBA has grown over years?
It's everything. It's part of how the NBA has grown. It's the young core of guys coming in. You understand, we were that team and those players at one point, for like the Tim Duncans and KGs and all those guys that were trying to extend their prime and their careers to, for as long as they could when we were coming into our prime. So it's the natural evolution of sports. It's a reminder of how difficult it is to win at this level, to be here every year. So don't take it for granted. It's the fact that that's probably going to be the norm as you keep going. But talent is at an all-time high, I feel like, across the board in the league, and seeing a little bit more parity now in terms of the teams that are kind of making it to this stage in the playoffs. So it's a great time, obviously, to be a fan in terms of, different faces coming out, and you'll still see those guys, I ain't gonna end this, but you're still gonna see those guys back. Brian, Katie, all those guys you mentioned. Ain't like they just gonna ride off into the sunset either.